Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 824. I'm Tom Quigley, your host. The SPaMCAST 824 compares the Great Avon Lake Tornado and power outage with the purported death of Agile. Kept that off with many in the industry doubling down on Agile purity to put the blush back on the rose. My upcoming high school reunion suggests you can never cross the same river twice, but crossing any river is still a challenge. Also, John M. Quigley and I talk about who is the most important person on a team. This is a counterpoint to my recent conversation with Jeremy Berriault on SPaMCAST 822. They sort of agree, but it depends. The Great Avon Lake Tornado and Agile. The lessons from the Great Avon Lake Tornado are useful when considering the state of Agile and the efforts to recapture the glory days. At about 3:40 p.m. on August 6, 2024, while I was Zooming with Dave McKenna, the lights went out and the internet. While the lights going out might not sound like a momentous event, about that time, a tornado leapt out of Lake Erie and flew over my house. The lights and the internet returned 9:30 on Friday. That was a while. Approximately 500,000 people lost their power. I can now check "been too close to a tornado" off of my life bingo card. This was not the first long-term power outage I've experienced. And there's no points for checking that box twice, by the way. In 2003, a tree branch tripped the power grid and shut down the east coast of the United States. It was an event that made a moderately positive impression on me. But this event was different. Heraclitus put it best: no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. Reflecting on the most recent brush with the Stone Age, and that is hyperbole, there were several telling differences. The first was, I'm more dependent on electricity than I was back in 2003. Not being able to easily charge my phone, my iPad, my computer, my lithium battery-powered blender, or my plug-in chainsaw reduced the utility of those appliances. The solar panel on my van was useful and worth the price I paid for it. Also, the battery backup on my sump pump, if you don't have one of those, you probably don't have a basement, was the best argument I've ever lost to my wife. Positives and negatives, but on the whole, this time things were a bit harder. 2. Life without the internet in 2024 makes it difficult to work remotely. As a gig worker in the U.S., there is little support structure. As firms exchange employees for contractors and gig workers to improve their cash flow and balance sheet, our economy is at greater risk. While I was unaffected, the long-term economic issue this pretends needs to be considered. This aspect was more of a problem than it was in 2003. 3. The most important difference between now and then was the reduction in spontaneous community. The 2024 power outage did nothing to slow the proliferation of portable generators. The quiet of the previous outage was replaced by the noise and smell of gasoline engines running day and night. Very few people sat out on their patio. It smelled bad, and interacted with neighbors, as we experienced in 2003. Was this experience better or worse? The answer, I think, depends on who you ask. The thought process to evaluate the event is not very different from the consideration of whether Agile is dead. I've suggested that it is not dead, but it's time for the movement to don mom and dad pants. Scott Ambler recently wrote that the Agile gold rush is over. I buy that. The Agile movement cannot return to its halcyon days. But like reaching middle age, it doesn't mean you're dead. It's just a different time, place, and we are different people. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, wrote, We cannot control the external events around us, but we can control our reactions to them. Accept that the world changes with equanimity, and then decide how you will react and engage with the world around you. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. We look forward to the conversation. Master Work Intake. Mastering Work Intake by Jeremy Willets and I hit the bookshelves earlier this year. Do you have your copy? We have been also running cohort-based workshops to help expose and solve this dirty secret. 2 of the questions we have gotten as we have promoted the workshops are, what is a cohort-based workshop? Why does it have so many letters? What value will I get if I join? Both are great questions, and we have an answer. Join us for a 1-hour open house to explore how to diagnose and solve work intake challenges, the most critical issue facing organizations today. This session will provide an overview of our course designed to help you master work intake and ensure your organization thrives. We'll cover key takeaways such as effective prioritization, navigating organizational structures, measuring work intake, and diagnosing common work intake issues. We'll leave you with actionable insights and a clear plan to address work intake problems immediately. Sign up on Eventbrite, link in the show notes, bit.ly/mastering work intake. John M. Quigley, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Tom, as always, I so look forward to these chats. They're so nice and informal, and we go where we go, and kind of funny.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. So, John, today I'd like to ask you a question that I asked Susan Parente yesterday.
Oh boy.
That's my evil laugh.
I'm going through it. I'm going through a tunnel, Tom. I'm not sure we can make this work.
So I asked Susan, who was the most important person on a team?
My guess is she couldn't really answer that nice and cleanly because there's no clean answer there.
What do you mean there's no clean answer?
That's going to really depend on circumstances and situation and what is known and what is less than known. For example, if we're working on a project or something, it's called a project, working on a project where the scope is not very clear, whoever has the closest connection to that to that where the scope originates for this project is probably going to be a very vital person, assuming they're able to elicit, evoke, and articulate those things. On the other hand, if we've gone past some good portion of that, and we're starting the testing part of this thing, maybe toward the final part, and we've had bumps along the way, it might be time to put the ball in the test group or the test responsible people's hands for a little bit. Those people become pretty important, lest we launch an abomination on our customer. And I would say abomination is graduated. If it's a gaming software for a PC, it works off the web, then no money is exchanged, and maybe nobody cares about that. But if you're talking about cars and planes, which is the stuff that I usually work around, that kind of matters if your product is an abomination and it's driving around at 80,000 pounds and doing 80 miles per hour. That's a lot of momentum.
It looks like these days that nobody really cares if the wheels fall off airplanes. So that must be okay.
I'm old school. I still give a care that the thing stays intact.
So it's contextual.
It's contextual, yeah.
If it's a team, then how does that factor in?
Well, if you just say it's the team, you're not really connecting an individual or a person with a certain area of expectation and maybe expertise, probably expertise also. So that may cover the entirety, but that's not in my view, that's not a good articulation because of those limitations, right? If we're all responsible for a thing, you've heard the saying, then nobody is really. I don't necessarily take that too far to heart, but there is a measure of truth to that. If I think you've got this thing covered, then I'm probably just going to let you do it, you know? But I know that's not our ideal state. We'd prefer to have collaboration across. But
okay. How does that affect then the idea of, teams that are really responsible for bringing the whole thing home? If an individual is responsible and for a specific thing, then how can you hold the team accountable for that? You can't.
Well, not really, but yeah, because the entirety of the team has to achieve the entirety of the project, right? If it's a one-person team, then I guess you assign the whole of the work to one person and deal with the consequences of that. But that's not been my experience. My experience has been that we all have an area that we have to perform. It's like a football team. Everybody's got a chunk they need to do, and they may even be specialized toward their chunk. I'm a receiver. That guy's a quarterback, whatever. And the team fails if I have a great receiver, but I can't get the ball to him. If I have a quarterback that can throw, but the receiver can't catch, I'm still, you're still doomed. So the thing is, each individual has to have a particular area that's theirs, not solely, but that they own more or less, that contributes to the team's success.
So I will pull on your metaphor of United States football for a second.
The only kind of football, by the way. I know.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the football that gets rolled around on the ground and is round and gets kicked.
Some folks say that's flopping.
Rolls around on the ground and gets kicked. That's called in the U.S. vernacular. That might be called soccer. Yes. Happens to be the largest sport in the entirety of the world, and probably makes more money and dwarfs the viewership of U.S. football.
Well, bigger isn't always better, Tom.
But regardless, so let's pull on that metaphor for a second, because occasionally I do watch those big people beat their brains in occasionally for a team to work, and the really good teams, the ones that tend to go to the Super Bowl or at least to the playoffs, have generally, while you might have somebody who's the quarterback and he's really good at that, or the receiver and he's really good at that, and the running backs are really good. But if they can't or won't perform other duties like blocking, they generally don't last very long on those kind of teams, and the team stinks because the goal isn't for any individual to, be the best be the best in the league. The goal is for the team to win.
Yeah.
Except in those circumstances where there's contract negotiation. And since you're not negotiating for the team, you're negotiating for individuals. I think we both can look at scenarios where the individual thinks they're the most important person on the team.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And not context dependent. It's them and it's period. Yeah. And that is actually part of the difficulty in creating these high performance teams, or people make it sound like it's pretty easy to do that, but you have to get the right personalities in there. In more than 30 years, I've probably been on I'm going to say three. That's probably about right. Three teams that I'm like, this is just a really good mix, right? The people they knew their areas and they worked them well. They knew when they weren't working them well and they needed help, and they were okay saying that. Like, speaking between members there was trust in the group. And
Trust.
you could use language that was a little harsh because nobody was going to take it personal. It was just, we understood that it's a little stressful right now.
So what happened to those teams?
Eventually, the sad part, they're disbanded at the end of the project. They may hold together for a little bit, but they're disbanded after the project and reassembled in some other project, not in the same way. And it's tough to get the same performance out of a disparate group. You change the group, you change everything.
I think that's where the project thinking or the project mindset or the project mentality just clashes with what works best in the real world, which is more of a product.
Yeah. So you keep the team together, because if you have a team, if you have a team that's working, just assuming that context of that team is able to handle the next project, you should probably keep them together.
With the next piece of work. And I would argue the project piece is all of the ideas that have been inculcated into that have become poisonous. It's become more of a thought of an assembly line and a manufacturing mentality kind of thing. And in reality, knowledge workers don't work that way.
Yeah.
I'm not, I have worked on assembly lines before, and they made sense and they were efficient. But I sure as heck wouldn't want to write software on an assembly line. Well, no. I'm just going to do all the SQL includes. You do all the joins over there, and when I'm done with one, I'll pass it over to you, kind of thing.
There, to be a little bit of a contrarian here, mostly I agree with everything you said, but there are reasons for organization segmentation that usually is part of the project. And for example, I have a department that writes software, and I have a department that performs testing. I have a department that gathers requirements and makes sure those are articulated well in that system.
Why is that segmentation? I mean, I know companies that do that, and and I don't necessarily buy that that's efficient or effective.
The plus side here, at least, let's take the testing part out. The testing is not as simple as here's a requirement, go do it. Develop a
I've been a tester. I know better than that.
Yeah, I figured you did. But okay, so there's this whole set of skills, equipment, tools that are going to be developed by that department. And then because you have this aggregate of people who are testing people, you have a sharing of testing knowledge theoretically within that department. Now this it actually happens, though. Yeah, theoretically, because sometimes it doesn't, but most times it doesn't, but occasionally it actually does. And that includes development of internal tools and testing techniques that can be very helpful. If you don't have something that kind of structure, you don't have the mass and the development of these tools and sharing. So it's some kind of mismatch of the two, because the things you said are very true. If I have an individual tester in this group, he's exposed to only the testing things he does in this group. He probably doesn't have the wherewithal and the financial budget to be able to develop more tools to help with this particular project and other projects, given that he sits in this seat on this particular project only.
I agree. I think the mishmash of the two can make sense. And that's where forward-thinking organizations have gone down the path of things like communities of practice, or having a very small group that acts as sort of the testing architects and think about those bigger pictures. and bring those skills into individual teams such that they can stick with products over a long period of time. And you don't have the over-the-wall handoff stuff.
Yeah, that's
so all of those things. We're on absolutely on the same page and violently agree with each other.
Yeah. One of the projects I was on actually won 2 awards. It won a local award, like for North America, and then won a global award. And as soon as the project was done, what do you think we did with the team?
Blow it up. Assign it different places.
Yeah, exactly. Boom. There you go. Well, we kept them in the same physical building. We put them in different rooms, but outside the room that they used to work in, now they're in separate buildings. So, yeah.
And the expectation is that they will continue to be high flying, and the reality is all the context is gone.
Yeah, the context is gone. The language of that team was different than the language outside that team. Everything was different. If maybe you could reestablish a working context individual with those individuals external, you still have to go through this whole rebuilding thing, and there's no guarantee you're going to get this 70s Rams team again, or the Pittsburgh Steelers. You might end up with the Detroit Lions from a decade ago.
Until last year.
Yeah, probably until last year.
It was multiple decades.
Yeah.
There is a proverb that basically says, no man can cross the same river twice. Yeah. And the basic point is that even if it's in the same place, the person is different. Not only is the water different, everything, so everything is different every time. And just reassembling people or taking seeds out of one group and hopefully think that you can plant them in another and it'll, that stuff is, I think it's a pipe dream.
Yeah, probably so. The thing is, if you have a team that's already working, you have a history and you have for lack of let's call it a momentum. You have these things.
I have lost 35 pounds, so it's less of a mass now.
Yeah, less of a mass, but still some measure of momentum. And you essentially disrupt that by distributing these people out. And so now you have the thing with the flywheel, where you're first putting in a lot of energy, you're not getting anything out of it. That's the place you're back at. You push on it, only moves a few inches. But if you do it long enough, maybe you get it moving a few more inches, and you do it long enough, it starts to move around a little bit on its own. Excellent. Not very fast.
Excellent metaphor. John, who is the most important on the team? On the team?
Well, as I said before we started recording, comically, it's me. But
well, you're absolutely wrong. If I'm on the team, it's something. No,
it's going to still be me. No, I'm just kidding.
And that, obviously, it is all context. John, how would people continue the conversation with John M. Quigley?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn at John M. Quigley. Okay, also send me, contact me on a value transformation website. There's a value transform website. There's a place for comments and things like that. You can connect with me there.
Super. So until next month, John, It's been marvelous.
I'm hoping the weather breaks. It has been wonderful chatting with you.
This week, we begin our reread of How to Be a Stoic by Massimo Pigliucci. By the way, buy a copy, read along. I bought this book while on a trip to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I was there for a speaking engagement, and my wife and I decided to make a weekend of it. My downfall was that the fabulous literary bookstore was near our Airbnb. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast number 825, we will feature our interview with Richmond Alake. We discussed AI, machine learning. We also discussed what comes next now that AI chat has been done. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?
you.